I've mentioned before the true test of whether a nutrient or supplement is good for you or not is a longevity test. That is, giving it to one group and a placebo to the other, and then checking in on them months or years later to see what happened. Sadly, we usually get this only in animal studies, if we get it at all. There are many supplements I'm wary of that I would like to have tested in this manner to feel comfortable taking them, and there's others that I believe would be proven effective if they were tested this way, but no one has bothered because there's just no money in it. After all, taurine, alpha-ketoglutarate, and even bilberry have been shown to increase lifespan in animal experiments, so who knows what we could find in things like methylene blue or betaine anhydrous, aka TMG, for example. Thankfully, in the rare cases where we have access to the data, we do have this kind of information with medications. We can look at mortality rates and see what an amazing difference our modern high-tech quaccines make, though probably not in the direction you want them to.
Good head! Would anybody else like some?
Oh no, it's lethal to humans. But it's probably lethal to androids, to be honest.
Truly, I will repent!
Most people don't realize that all the data for medication trials is a very closely kept secret. All we get are carefully crafted excerpts from these trials, which are reviewed by the so-called peer review process, which is really there to keep the data set closed. Generally, this is an expression of a change in some marker, such as LDL cholesterol, for example, which, by the way, has never been proven to be a causative agent of heart disease in any experimental trial. So, even if this claim is true, which is something that is never independently verified, that does not mean there is an actual benefit to the user. It may be it does nothing positive in practice, or that it has positive aspects, but it is very harmful overall because of side effects.
When you look at primary prevention, turns out the RCTs do not show any benefit on mortality. Do you know what the mean increase in lifespan is from treating high LDL with a statin is? 4 days. 4 days.
Just to make it clear, modern medicine is not really backed by hard science at all, and what science there is kept carefully hidden behind closed doors, and I suspect the main reason is that we'd then be able to doubt its veracity.
Yeah. I'm sorry, medicine is about as much of a science as, I don't know, voodoo?
An interventional experiment is performed, but there's never any replication of any medication trials, and in the rare cases we get better data than the snippets from the trials we usually get, the results very often show a big problem. While statins were shown to have no effect on lifespan, meds like Neurontin, Ambien, and many others have been shown to have a remarkably negative impact on mortality. Unsurprisingly to me, this also turns out to be true for the recent quaccine.
Because what it would mean is that if you are only looking at 28 days, you would miss autoimmune pathology that could contribute to death. And when you look at the image here, you can see that there were some deaths early on, but not a lot in the first few days. And then it gradually rose to a peak of about 120 days. And I thought that this was very important for us to look at all-cause mortality in order to try and make sense of the fact that many countries that had high vaccination rollout patterns also had excess deaths, even though there was a mortality death, meaning that people had already died from severe COVID. And so the question should be, you would expect their mortality to go down after they have been vaccinated if severe COVID-19 had dropped. And so you clearly had this disconnect, which nobody really tried to clarify. But this kind of information is giving us some more information. Let's see what else they had to say.
How many days, the x-axis is the days, number of days, the death, there was a death timing.
オレンジのスポットは非接種者の、死亡者のデータです。
The orange dots are the unvaccinated people.
青いドットは接種者ということですが、打ってから間もなくというよりも、接種後120日前後に非常に大きなピークが、あることがわかります。
And the blue dots are the vaccinated ones. And as you can see, the peak of the death happens around the 120 days timing.
Another important point that I will make here is that, interestingly, when you look at when they do come back together, this is after about almost up to 300 days, the blue dots don't go below the orange dots, and the orange dots mean the unvaccinated. And so even though there was significant mortality in the early phase, that mortality debt is still not present by coming below the unvaccinated. And what it means is that, therefore, in this cohort who have already had some degree of excess deaths, it suggests in my mind that there still is a slightly increased risk even in the period of time going forward after 300. This is almost a year down the line. So these are very important patterns that really need to be clarified.
Well, you can see a large clump of deaths a few months out from taking the supposed cure. What's more telling is that the mortality levels never go back down to normal. This is a sign that serious damage has been done, and as has been suspected for a long time, many treated people are falling to the very first bug that comes along after they get these treatments.
It's as easy as crushing an ant. You know, the...
Recently, a guy who worked for one of these demonical criminal organizations we call corporations today was secretly recorded saying some very incriminating things about the process that was used to bring these medications into being.
None of that stuff was safe and effective. We didn't do the typical test. Like the typical process, that's why it takes so long to get a product on the market. The typical process is all this clinical trial testing and stuff in a small population. This was just, let's test it on some, lab rat models, analyze and see if it works and stuff like that, and just throw it to the wind and see what happens.
People didn't know that. Like the patients.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sure somebody's gonna get sued for that stuff eventually.
Explain as you would a child.
We pretended. We lied.
Is rule breaking really the issue, though? As I pointed out already, even if the rules had been followed, the rules today do not guarantee that any new medication is actually beneficial. They only show that some metric went up or down in some way that's deemed to be positive, but they don't prove that there's any overall benefit. If you drank gasoline, some metric somewhere in the body would probably be improved in some sense. But we know gasoline is lethal, so it's impossible to say that there's a net gain. We know many treatments for the emperor of all maladies, as it's called, that are also highly lethal, yet they're dispensed like candy, even though, when given the so-called standard of care, many forms of this disease have no survivors past 5 years, so obviously it's not very effective. Except in a few rare cases, such as Pablo Kelly, who happened to survive for 9 years with glioblastoma after switching to a zero-carb diet and implementing a regular fasting schedule, a diagnosis that usually means you have a lifespan of months remaining, not years. Some people have also complained about mRNA, but is that really the problem? mRNA is just skipping some steps in the process that a normal treatment would have gone through anyway. The problem is not in the mRNA itself, but it will always be inherently dangerous due to two fatal flaws of this system. The first one is DNA contamination, which is very difficult to deal with and also expensive to deal with. Even the correct mRNA floating around in your body is a foreign protein and it causes an immune reaction. And that's what they're trying to do, but unfortunately this can also cause problems, and not just the obvious immediate reaction that traditional quaccines can cause, such as anaphylaxis, but also ongoing autoimmune reactions. That's a risk for every pathogen you encounter, but generally your body seldom has a serious autoimmune reaction from infections, though it can happen. It's much more likely for even a standard quaccine to have these effects than an infection. Now imagine you don't just have one foreign protein in the body that's going to produce antibodies, but hundreds, thousands, or even millions of them.
Now here's another batch of vaccines that Dr. Speaker analysed. As we see, these ones are Pfizer and these ones are Moderna. Now this is the historic level of contamination of DNA allowed. This was the amount allowed up to 1996. And we see that all of the contamination by the historic tolerances have been exceeded. These are the current FDA guidelines here. Now we also see that this scale is logarithmic, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. So we see that these three marks here are actually quite significantly, with the Pfizer, quite significantly above the current levels allowed for SV40 contamination, DNA contamination. Now the other thing we noticed about the levels of contamination that were or are allowed is that they seem to be going up. More contamination seems to be allowed. Let me just give you some of the figures on that. So FDA WHO guidelines are getting lenient. Now in 1986 and I think up to 1996, the allowed amount was the allowed amount of DNA contamination was 10 picograms per dose. 10 picograms per dose. Now a picogram is 1,000th of a nanogram. So in other words, the amount of DNA permitted was increased by 3 orders of magnitude. It was increased from 10 picograms up to 10 nanograms. And 10 nanograms, of course, is 10,000 picograms. So the allowed amount of DNA contamination in 1996 was increased by a factor of 1,000. And David said this, it's based on speculative calculations for naked DNA. And of course, remember, these guidelines are for naked DNA, not the DNA that is in the lipid nanoparticles. And we've noticed that the DNA in the lipid nanoparticles can transfect cells 100 times more efficiently than the naked DNA that these guidelines were designed for. And for some strange reasons that I certainly don't understand, he also taught us that in 2003, plasma DNA-based vaccines were given privileged status. So for some reason, the amounts of contamination didn't seem to count quite as much. So all quite strange, really.
I'd also point out that since it's using black mold a lot of the time, it's also going to have neurotoxins in there, and obviously they're not doing anything to get rid of the DNA, so they're probably not going to do anything to get rid of that either. And you're not just getting one protein in the hopes your body uses it to make an antibody. You could get hundreds, thousands, or even more foreign proteins from these biosynthetic concoctions. I've talked in the past about citric acid and how it's made from toxic black mold, along with allulose and many other so-called natural sweeteners. And that's why they're very harmful, or at least part of it. However, your body is very good at screening out the things you eat, even though it's not perfect, especially when your gut is in bad shape. On the other hand, if you allow some lunatic to inject you with a large dose of experimental foreign proteins, along with a bunch of nanoparticles, then your body has absolutely no defense against it. You may get lucky and get zero side effects, or you could wind up with the worst possible outcome.
Do you think I could be sick?
Drill?
Yes, doctor.
I'm afraid that you have a brain tumor.
Yes.
And that brings us to the worst problem, the one that makes this so-called technology an inherent failure. And think about that for a second. Do you think it's a good idea to inject high technology into your body? Well, it's definitely not a good idea if it's nanoparticle based. Did you know that oxalates cause cancer? I'm willing to wager that unless you got that information here, you probably didn't. Why is that though? Well, guess what? Tiny oxalate crystals are nanoparticles. That's why they cause cancer, because they damage any cells that they come into contact with. I'm sure you have heard commercials on TV by lawyers talking about mesothelioma and lung cancer from asbestos. Asbestos is one of the most damaging substances in the world, and like oxalates, it accumulates in the interstitial area, and that's why it causes mesothelioma, which is an interstitial cancer. It's like the area around the cells in between them. And asbestos has been known to be dangerous since Roman times, but the manufacturers knowingly incorporated it into products used in construction and in other industries. This cost countless people their lives and put many others into years of agonizing treatment. Well, guess what kind of technology you're having injected into your body? That's right, it's nanoparticles. You can't just inject mRNA in the body or even store it in naked form. You also don't want to have large amounts of degraded mRNA in the body, as it would make your cells go completely haywire, making random proteins. So instead they use a nanoparticle delivery system. They initially claimed that this would be safe because the particles would stay at the injection site. In reality, it also gets into the bloodstream and has even been seen to accumulate in the human ovaries. Nanoparticles like oxalate and asbestos cause issues because they easily penetrate the cell and then cause DNA damage, inflammation, and even cell death. They also congregate over time into the interstitial area, and that's why they cause bladder pain, mesothelioma, and so on. Fertility rates also appear to have been affected greatly in recent years, and this makes perfect sense if it's accumulating in the ovaries.
You're a doctor and you're a researcher, and you put that together and you have a quantitative team that helps you with this, so you end up with really good quality data, and you've just published a really significant paper. Why should people watch this video, Vibeke, and learn about this paper?
I think it's important to watch because what we show is that women who had a vaccination against COVID-19 before conception has not so good a chance to give birth. They actually gave birth to around 1/3 less children, which shows that there could be some kind of infertility linked to the vaccines against COVID-19.
It really is a lot, isn't it? So vaccinated women had about 1/3 less successful conceptions than unvaccinated women in terms of COVID-19 vaccinations.
Yeah.
And is this data, well, basically, I was going to ask a silly question then, because we know we can't get this data from the United States.
No.
We can't get it from the UK, but you did get it from the Czech Republic, which has been much more open with its data.
Yeah.
So good that we've got the data from the Czech Republic, but what would you like to see in terms of data releases from everywhere else in the world, basically?
I mean, we would love to have access to data, as you say, from the US, from the UK, from, any odd country, so to speak, because we expect that we will replicate the finding, the signal, which is a very varying signal, because many countries, not only Denmark, not only the Czech Republic, but many countries are suffering from a very rapid decline of birth rates.
In fact, the fertility rate seems to have been reduced by about a third, and that's among people who are trying to get pregnant, not just all people as a whole. Another very vulnerable cell type no one seems to mention much is the T cell, and its close cousin, the Treg cell. These are the cells that control the immune system, both when it comes to attacking pathogens, including cancer, and to suppressing autoimmune diseases. These cells are very limited in number and very difficult to replace, and when they're all damaged or destroyed, you're totally open to new and exciting sudden onset autoimmune disorders. Does that sound familiar? Or perishing to a sniffle, or to getting the dreaded turbo cancer. If you have few or no functioning T cells, then you're wide open to cancer, and there's no slowing it down, let alone stopping it. That's most likely why so many extremely aggressive cancers are appearing in the last few years. The cancer is the same, but many people have become totally defenseless against it.
You want died like last men visit Amazonia?
What'd they die of?
Crushed pelvises.
Yes!
Oh, thank you, Lord in heaven.
The thymus is where T cells and Treg cells are made, though we make very few as adults. I have a dedicated video talking about the thymus and how fasting and other interventions can repair it and improve its function. But suffice to say, 72 plus hour fasts are going to release a lot of growth hormone, and that's needed to regenerate the thymus. It will also release stem cells, hundreds of which are needed to make a single T cell, because they have to be absolutely perfect to function correctly, otherwise they would attack your own body. Normally, people can get good benefits from fasting right away, but if your immune system is in truly dire shape, and it will be if you're having these so-called post-viral symptoms or these post-quaccine symptoms, then you're really going to need a lot of nutritional support. I have a list in the description of the video, and most of these nutrients are the exact same ones the immune system requires to perform healing in the body. Without them, you simply can't heal and regenerate, especially taurine and L-cysteine. So if you have serious problems, I would do this before you even start fasting, because you won't get the full effect if your nutrients have been depleted by constant immune responses to autoimmune triggers. In this case, taking some of them as supplements is advisable, and getting the best possible nutrition the rest of the time is also going to be a must.
Where you did it. Tastes great.
Are you enjoying your Ketmop blood ticks, Dr. Lazarus?
Just like Mother used to make.
There's an old saying that the difference between a conspiracy theory and a fact is about 6 months. When it comes to the most fined, most criminally culpable industry in our realm, I would be extremely cautious about even the most mundane medications. Increased mortality, brain shrinkage, and endless other serious issues or side effects. A surprising number of the most commonly prescribed medications are known for. Experimental mortality rates are the true gold standard of health science, not randomization, placebos, blinding, statistical significance, or anything else. Everything else is dwarfed in comparison.
Yes! Careful! God, you are my prince! You like it there?
Once again, I just wanted to thank everyone who thumbs up all the videos and watches every video. Without you guys, the video doesn't get any impressions that go out to the general public. It just sits there and it dies on the vine. That means there's no chance anyone at all is going to see it if they're not a frequent viewer already. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And also, of course, thank all of you who financially support the channel. It really can't come at a better time, and I highly appreciate every single one of you. I also want to remind people again, I post a lot of studies in my post section, and also I highlight older videos there. People often ask questions in these videos or find a subject that they weren't looking for, but they found to be very helpful. Watching my old videos is also a great way to spend the extra time that you're going to have while you fast. And with so many videos, there's sure to be something for just about everyone.
This is fantastic, a whole world of imagination beyond the Oompa Band.
Well, that's wonderful. I have to go.
Oh, you're not going.
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're not going.
Yes, I am.
You're not going to go.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Goodbye, Drill.